The Glow Run, a novel by Chips. Chapter 1. The Price of a Dream. The marina was quiet, except for the creak of mooring lines and the slap of winter rain on the decks. Portland was a city that never quite slept, but at the edge of the Willamette River, past the cranes and warehouses, it was easier to believe in silence. Ethan Black sat hunched over a battered laptop at the tiny galley table of his boat. A single bulb dangled above him, swinging with the gentle rock of the hull. He hadn't slept in 30 hours. Coffee cups crowded the table like dead soldiers. The numbers on the screen didn't make sense. He'd run them 4 times already. 1 gram of marijuana in South Korea, $100. It looked like a typo, some artifact of a badly translated article, until he dug deeper. Reports buried on obscure forums. Travel accounts from expats. A government statement disguised in the dry language of law. The price wasn't a fluke. It was reality. Ethan rubbed his face. $100 a gram, $45,000 a pound. And he knew where to get pounds for under 1,000. His breath came slow, shaky. He whispered, almost as if someone might overhear him. Jesus Christ, now this is it. It wasn't the first scheme that had come to him in the middle of the night. Ethan's life was a graveyard of half-built hustles, an import business that collapsed under customs fines, a crypto venture that bled out when the market crashed, a bar that went under in a wave of rising rents. But this wasn't a hustle. This was math. This was leverage so obscene it felt like fate. He reached for his notebook, scrawling figures. 300 pounds at $30 per gram wholesale. That's 136 kilos. Roughly $4 million in crypto if he found the right buyer. Even if he lost a third of it, even if he had to grease palms and dodge bullets, it would still be more money than he had ever touched. The problem was moving it. He stared at the water beyond the porthole, black and endless, and thought of all the ways smugglers had failed before him. Cargo ships swarming with inspectors, couriers stripped bare at airports, fishing trawlers boarded in the middle of the night by coast guards. He needed something different, a plan so crazy it wouldn't even look like a plan. His eyes drifted to the shadow of his cutter rig outside, tethered to the dock. He thought of the sky beyond the city clouds, of radar towers turning in slow circles, and of small planes that went missing every year without anyone asking too many questions. The idea struck him all at once, half vision, half madness, not just moving the weed, making the plane itself vanish. He leaned back, staring up at the swaying bulb, a grin breaking across his tired face. A ghost plane, he whispered. A goddamn ghost. Chapter 2. The Mad Plan. The next morning he woke to gulls shrieking outside and the stink of salt air. His head pounded, but the idea was still there, sharp as glass. He spent the day buried in research, aviation forums, Coast Guard reports, accident statistics. He pieced together fragments until something resembling a plan took shape. A Cessna 182 Skylane. Cheap enough to buy through the back channels. Small enough to be invisible in the clutter of civilian radar. Strong enough to carry just over 1,000 pounds if stripped. At 3,000 feet, a Cessna could glide 27 miles with no fuel. Far enough to nose into a lake, river, or inlet. Fuel had to vanish, too. A forced leak would mimic a real accident, the kind that left nothing but rumors and wreckage. That's when he remembered the rifle. The Hatsan Piledriver .50 caliber air rifle. A weapon more suited for big game than small talk. Compressed air, not fire. 4,350 psi behind a slug that punched like a hammer. It would tear through aluminum skin like paper without risking sparks. He scribbled diagrams in the margins of his notebook. Fuel tanks, punctured midair, controlled leak. Engine dies over target. The plane glides into water, sinks, burns nothing. A ghost that leaves no flame. But the cargo, 300 pounds of vacuum-sealed weed, couldn't go down with it. It needed its own wings. That night, he walked the docks in the drizzle, thinking of chutes. Not just parachutes, but timed ones, pressure-triggered. Delayed deployment so the cargo didn't tangle with them when they bailed. A 3-second delay. Enough for separation. Enough to track it down with night vision and UV paint. The math danced in his head like scripture. Dangerous, elegant scripture. He wasn't naive. He knew one man couldn't pull this off alone. He would need a crew. Men he could trust. Or at least men who had nowhere else to go. Chapter 3. Building the Crew. Reed came first. They met in a garage on the outskirts of Portland, a place that smelled of oil and regret. Reed had been Air Force, a mechanic who could strip an engine blindfolded. Years in Afghanistan, then years fixing crop dusters for cash, then nothing. A man with hands that needed something to do. Ethan laid it out for him over a dented workbench, the smell of solvent thick in the air. Ethan. $100 a gram, Reed. That's 45 grand a pound. I've got the supply. I need the delivery. Reed, snorting. You want me to smuggle weed into South Korea? You're out of your mind. Ethan. Not smuggle. Vanish. A ghost plane. Punctured tanks. No fire. Glide into water. Sinks with nothing left to find. Reed leaned back, squinting. His face was a road map of sleepless years. You'd need precision. You'd need a leak that looks natural. If it bleeds too fast, you blow. Too slow, you overshoot. And God help you if the wing tanks unbalance mid-flight. Ethan leaned in. That's why I need you. Reed laughed, a short, bitter sound. But later, when Ethan slid a small bundle of cash across the bench, Reed didn't push it back. Santiago was different. They found him in a dive bar near the Columbia River, half drunk on mezcal, bragging about base jumps and smuggling runs through Mexico. Where Reed was quiet, precision, Santiago was chaos with a pulse. He thrived on risk like most men thrived on oxygen. When Ethan pitched the plan, Santiago grinned like a man handed a death wish wrapped in gold. 3,000 feet, he said, laughing. That's a suicide jump. 15 seconds to pull. If your chute fouls, you're red paste on a hillside. Ethan shrugged. You scared? Santiago slammed back his drink and stood. Hell no, I'm in. By the time the three of them sat together for the first time, Ethan, Reed, Santiago, it was already too late to turn back. They weren't a crew yet. Not really, just three men chasing the same ghost. But the seed was planted. And ghosts, once born, are hard to kill. Chapter 4, Across the Pacific. The cutter rocked on the swells, the sails taut against the early morning wind. They had left Portland quietly, no send-off, no eyes on them, but gulls wheeling overhead. To the world, they were just three men sailing south, another nameless crew lost in the tide of mariners. But below deck, hidden under false ballast, the truth lay sealed in blue barrels. 300 pounds of tightly packed West Coast marijuana. The ocean did not forgive carelessness. Days blurred into each other. Gray horizons, the hiss of waves, the hiss of wind through ropes. Salt crusted their clothes and lips. Ethan spent his nights hunched over charts, red lamp swinging overhead, tracing a path across a vast emptiness. The Pacific was both ally and enemy, too big to patrol, but eager to kill. Reed worked like a machine. He checked every line, every rigging, every pump. His silence was constant, except for muttered curses when something didn't fit his exacting standards. Santiago was chaos as always. He drank from a flask when the wind rose, sang Spanish ballads into storms, laughed when the sea threatened to tear them apart. On the 12th day, the storm hit. Black clouds swallowed the horizon. Wind screamed. Rain came sideways in sheets. Waves rose like walls. Ethan gripped the helm with white knuckles, fighting to keep the bow into the wind. Reed lashed the sails, teeth bared, water streaming off his beard. Santiago, madman that he was, strapped himself to the mast and screamed laughter at the thunder. For 40 hours, the storm tried to kill them. The cutter groaned, but it lived. When dawn finally broke, the sky was pale and empty, the sea rolling like a tired beast. Ethan collapsed below deck, shivering. Reed sat beside him, silent. Santiago stumbled in dripping wet, grinning like a lunatic. "This boat," Santiago wheezed, "wants to live as bad as we do." Chapter 5. Secrets at Sea. By the 20th day, paranoia set in. Food rationing grew tight. The generator failed twice. Reed accused Santiago of skimming fuel for his midnight smokes. Santiago accused Reed of hoarding canned beans. Ethan tried to play mediator, but cracks spread through the hull of their trust. One night, Reed cornered him near the galley. "Ethan, you trust him?" Ethan looked at Santiago snoring on the bench, half-empty flask in his fist. "I trust that he wants money. That's enough." Reed's eyes narrowed. "Men like him, they want chaos more. Don't forget it?" Ethan didn't sleep well that night. The days that followed only deepened the silence. The Pacific was a mirror, endless blue, but beneath it lay pressure, tension building like a storm still far away. Chapter 6. The Island of Ghosts. The atoll rose from the horizon like a mirage. Low jungle, sharp cliffs, a crescent of white sand. Ethan had chosen it for its isolation, its invisibility. Satellite maps showed nothing but birds and trees. But satellites lied. They beached in a hidden cove and dragged the barrels ashore under cover of mangroves. The air was thick, wet, humming with insects. Then they saw the smoke, a thin thread rising from deeper in the jungle. "Campfire," Reed muttered. Santiago squinted. "Locals?" "Could be fishermen," Ethan said. "Could be worse." They pushed inland, machetes cutting a path. After an hour, crouched in ferns, they saw them. 3 men tending nets strung with drying squid. Old rifles slung on shoulders. Fishermen, yes, but armed. Not harmless, not safe. That night, the 3 of them sat in the shadows of the jungle, whispering. Reed, "If they see us unloading, it's over." Santiago, "Then we take them out first." Ethan, "No, we stay invisible. If they think they're alone here, we're safe. If they know we're here, we're dead." They built their camp deeper inland, a clearing cut with sweat and machetes. Reed began assembling the Cessna from the parts delivered by their Filipino broker. Every rivet, every bolt was a prayer. But on the 4th night, Santiago returned from scouting POW. "They're not just fishermen," he said. "They've got radios, military ones." Reed's face went stone hard. "North Koreans? Has to be." That night, Ethan lay awake listening to the jungle whisper, the weight of eyes unseen pressing in from the dark. And when Reed discovered their fuel stash half-drained 2 days later, paranoia turned to terror. Someone was watching. Someone was waiting. Chapter 7. The Korean Connection. Ethan had always hated airports, but Incheon was different. It was too clean, too bright. Every surface gleamed like a mirror waiting to expose him. The smell of disinfectant stung his nose. He walked through the concourse as just another foreigner, beard-trimmed, hair cropped short, wearing an anonymous jacket bought in Tokyo on a layover. His passport was fake but flawless. His story rehearsed. A consultant for logistics firms, here for a short-term contract. Still, every security officer's glance felt like a spotlight. Every camera on the ceiling felt aimed at him. Seoul was chaos. Neon signs stacked sky-high. Narrow alleys full of smoke and steam. Taxis darting like predators. Ethan felt swallowed, just another face in the tide, which was exactly what he needed. But finding a buyer in this city was like looking for a ghost in a graveyard. He spent weeks haunting backroom bars, paying bribes, probing whispers. Twice he was almost beaten by thugs who thought he was a cop. Once he followed a lead to a karaoke den and ended up drinking soju with men who turned out to be shipping clerks, not smugglers. It wasn't until contact in Taiwan pointed him toward a hostess bar called Moonlight that he finally met Mr. Park. Park was young for power, mid-30s, hair slicked, suit sharp enough to cut glass. But his eyes were old, eyes that had seen violence and decided it was useful. They sat in a private booth, the noise of drunken businessmen muffled behind velvet curtains. Park poured drinks, but didn't touch his own. Ethan, 30 a gram, craft grade. You'll never see weed like this here. Double the potency of what's flooding your streets. Park smiling faintly. Too high. The market is small. Risk is enormous. Ethan. Retail is 100. You'll triple your money, and you'll have something no rival can match. Park. Payment? Ethan. Crypto, Monero. No banks, no paper trail. You also provide IDs, safe houses, and exit passage to Jeju after delivery. Park leaned back, tapping his glass. The silence stretched. Finally, he said, if you fail, or if police touch this, I will feed you to the ocean while you are still breathing. Ethan didn't blink. Then I won't fail. They shook hands, and Ethan felt the trap close around him. Chapter 8, Preparing the Drop. Back on the island, paranoia had bloomed like mold in the damp. Reed muttered constantly about the drained fuel barrels. Santiago swore he saw a light in the trees one night, a faint glimmer like a cigarette ember. Ethan couldn't decide if it was real or Santiago's madness. The plane was taking shape. The Cessna's ribs gleamed in the half-light of their jungle clearing, camouflage netting overhead breaking the sunlight into mottled patterns. Reed worked with obsessive focus, his knuckles scarred from slipped tools. Every night they tested the cargo chutes. Reed had rigged cheap barometric sensors to altimeters. A barrel dropped from a cliff would fall 3 seconds, then snap, parachute bloom. But the wind played tricks. One test barrel drifted 1/2 mile into the sea before they could recover it. Another tangled in the trees, shredded. Reed. If the wind's wrong the night of the drop, we lose everything. Ethan. Then we jump right after. Track them ourselves. Santiago, grinning. That's suicide. Ethan. That's insurance. To mark the barrels, Santiago painted them with phosphorescent solution, non-toxic glow that only showed under UV. In the jungle, under blacklight, they glimmered faintly like ghosts. Reed shook his head. We're betting $4 million on glow paint and luck. Ethan answered softly. We're betting on precision. But precision was a fragile thing, and every night the jungle whispered like it knew their secrets. Chapter 9. The Night Flight. The moon was gone. Clouds smothered the stars. The sea was a sheet of ink. The Cessna rattled down their improvised strip and lifted into the void, heavy with barrels in its belly. Ethan kept her low, hugging the waves, blacked out. The instruments glowed dim green, the only light in the cabin. Reed sat beside him, the pellet rifle between his knees. Santiago crouched over the cargo hatch, eyes wild with adrenaline. They flew in silence for miles, the coastline a darker shadow against the sea. At 3:08 a.m., Ethan gave the nod. Reed raised the Hatson, aimed down through the floor hatch, and squeezed. The pellet hissed. A faint pop. Gasoline smell filled the cabin as the tanks began to bleed. "Leak's steady," Reed muttered. "We're on schedule." "Cargo," Ethan said. Santiago grinned and shoved the first barrel into the night, then another, then another. Each vanished into the black. 3 seconds of silence before the distant snap of parachutes deploying. Then it was their turn. Ethan banked the plane toward the black oval of a lake inland. He looked at Reed. "Time to jump." They clipped on, shoved open the side door. Wind howled. Santiago kissed a rosary and laughed. One by one, they dove into darkness. The Cessna, bleeding fuel, droned ahead, its nose dipping. It banked once, gliding, then vanished into the night. A ghost bird headed for its grave. And the 3 men fell, the roar of air in their ears chasing glowing barrels into oblivion. Chapter 10. The glow in the dark. The sky swallowed them. Ethan fell into blackness so complete that even the roar in his ears felt distant. The last thing he'd seen was the plane banking toward a dark stain of water. Then nothing. No lights, no horizon, only the void. The parachute snapped open with a violence that nearly tore his shoulders out. He swung there, breath ragged, heart hammering. Somewhere to his right, Reed cursed in pain. To his left, Santiago was laughing like a madman, the sound ripped apart by wind. Then the weather changed. Wind stiffened, caught Ethan's canopy wrong, spun him. He fought the lines, twisting in the air until water slammed him sideways. He was under before he could think. Canopy dragging, straps binding. Panic clawed through his chest. He kicked, fought, finally tore himself free. When he surfaced, gasping, the storm was breaking over them. Rain slashed his face, waves shoved him down. He fumbled for the UV torch clipped at his vest. A purple beam swept across the black water, and the sea answered. Faint green flickers, ghost lights dancing across the swells. The barrels. "There!" he shouted, though the storm drowned him out. Santiago thrashed through the water, clutching one barrel as it bobbed. Reed was pale, swimming with one arm, but he reached the shoreward side and helped haul it in. They went back again and again, searching, swimming, dragging the drums toward a mangrove inlet. Some were lost, pulled out to sea, vanishing forever. But 3 barrels made it to the roots, hidden under brush. By dawn, they collapsed in the mud, soaked, bleeding, breathing hard. The glow was fading from the barrels. "Enough," Reed muttered, clutching his injured arm. "We got enough." Ethan wanted to argue, but he looked at Reed's gray face, Santiago's shaking hands, and knew the sea had taken its cut. Chapter 11. The Warehouse of Lies. They entered the city in silence. A van carried them through the industrial district, windows grimy, engine loud enough to mask nerves. The warehouse stood by the river, concrete walls stained with rust. Inside, a single fluorescent buzzed above an office window. Park waited, calm, unreadable. 2 men flanked him, hands near their belts. The first barrel was rolled forward, lid pried open. A sweet, sharp smell filled the air. One of Park's men packed a glass pipe. Lit, inhaled. He exhaled with wide eyes. "Stronger," he murmured. Park didn't smile, he simply nodded. "Payment?" "Digital," Ethan said. "Most now. The rest when we're clear." Park tapped keys on a laptop. A transfer pinged Ethan's encrypted phone. Enough zeros to make his throat tighten. But tension never left the room. More barrels were opened, tested. Men moved with the careful rhythm of people waiting for violence. Ethan felt it like static. The deal was good. Too good. Which meant it couldn't last. Park finally stepped closer, eyes on him. "Sometimes," he said, "the world selects the ruin for you." Ethan kept his voice calm. Then we make sure it ruins someone else. The counting continued, but Ethan knew the room was shifting. Betrayal was already on the floor, just waiting to be spoken. Chapter 12. Betrayal. The safe house above a karaoke bar reeked of smoke and mildew. Reed slept in a chair, arm bound to his chest. Santiago smoked by the window, ember glowing in the dark. Ethan sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the phone. At 3 a.m., it buzzed once, a timer reset. His dead man switch was still alive, for now. Steps came on the stairs, 3, then 1, then 3 again. Polite knuckles on the door. Park entered, flanked by 2 new men. His face was tired, but his eyes still sharp. He leaned against the wall, spoke softly. "I dislike messy endings. We will have a neat one. You will leave tonight. You will never return." Ethan studied him. "And the men who disagreed?" "The river is quiet," Park said simply. Silence pressed the room. Santiago's grin was gone. Reed's jaw tightened. Ethan lowered his voice. "If I don't make it to sunrise, files go public. Names, faces, coordinates. Rivals will come for you." For the first time, Park hesitated. The air shifted. His men glanced at him, waiting. "At last," Park sighed. "Then we will have a neat ending. Go slowly." They left with their lives, but not their peace. Chapter 13, Escape Route. The boat was a rusted fishing skiff, its paint flaking, engine coughing like an old man. The captain barely spoke a word. His eyes were sun-bleached and hollow, a man who'd seen too much ocean to be surprised by 3 strangers with heavy bags. They motored south, hugging the coastline, waves slapping the hull. Ethan kept watch at the bow, scanning the horizon as if paranoia could be beaten back with vigilance. Reed sat hunched, his injured arm wrapped tight, pain etched into every line of his face. Santiago filled the silence with stories, half true, half madness, his laugh ringing out too loudly across the water. On the second night, the sea turned against them. Rain came in sheets, lightning splitting the sky. The skiff pitched and groaned. Reed lashed himself to the railing, white-knuckled. Santiago stood arms out, shouting into the storm like he was daring it to take him. Ethan gripped the wheel, eyes burning, feeling the weight of their fortune hidden in the hold. By dawn, the storm passed, leaving them hollow-eyed but alive. "Ghosts now," Santiago muttered. "That's all we are." No one disagreed. Chapter 14, The Ghost Plane Mystery. Weeks later, far from the island, a story surfaced in Korean papers. A Cessna had been found, or pieces of it, twisted aluminum and a wheel dredged from a lake inland. No bodies, no flight plan, no answers. Officials called it pilot error. Locals whispered of smugglers, but the truth was stranger. A plane that had bled itself dry and fallen into silence. The phrase appeared on lips in bars and whispers in alleys. The ghost plane. Ethan read the article in a Manila cafe. His hand shook as he turned the page. Across the table, Reed stared, jaw set. "They'll never stop chasing ghosts now." Santiago smirked, though it was thinner than before. "Ghosts can't be caught." But Ethan knew ghosts could linger. They could haunt. They could be remembered forever. Chapter 15, Epilogue. The Pacific stretched endless, their cutters sliding across it, slow and steady. The money was real now, weightless in digital wallets, yet heavier than any cargo they'd carried. Reed spoke less and less. His shoulders stiffened into something permanent, and his silence grew into a wall. Santiago spoke more, as if words could keep the dark at bay. His laughter was still wild, but Ethan could hear the cracks in it. At night, Ethan stood at the helm, stars above, ocean below. He thought of Park, of the men by the river, of barrels glowing faintly in black water. He thought of how close they'd come to vanishing for good. He remembered Park's words. What comes back to you is only what you sent out. What had they sent out? Greed, violence, lies. And what had come back? Survival, at least for now. He whispered into the night, as he had on that first night in Portland, when the plan was just numbers and dreams. A ghost plane, he said softly. And ghosts never sleep. The cutter groaned. The ocean breathed. And the three men sailed on, rich, alive, and forever hunted by what they had become. The end.